Good morning. How are you doing, Kim?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to interview with you today.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, actually, but I appreciate that.
Okay, first of all, I noticed that you have a very nice boutique type law firm.
Right.
And that you've only started it, back in 2017?
That's right. Kim, I spent about 30 years, I hate to admit this, but I spent about 30 years of my career working in large law firms over in Tampa. I worked for two in particular. And when I turned 57 years old, I've now dated myself, I decided that I wanted to cut back a little bit, make life a little bit more about fun and less about working all the time. So I moved my practice over here to Safety Harbor, where I have lived with my family for the last 32 years. The one thing that did happen that I didn't expect is I'm not working any less than I was before. So the idea of slowing down, that didn't really come to fruition, but I will tell you this, I really love being in this location here. It's a beautiful little town. There's sophisticated enough issues that it makes my practice, fit in the marketplace here. I'm just thrilled. So I've been a lawyer a long, long time. I've been a lawyer here for the past 5 years in downtown Safety Harbor, right on Main Street.
What areas of law do you specialize in?
Well, I specialize in business law primarily. And when I say business law, I mean both as transactions, in other words, doing business transactions, real estate sales of businesses and companies, those types of transactions. And then also, I do a lot of litigation. In my earlier career in the bigger firms, I was primarily a litigation attorney. I did a lot of reorganization work, Chapter 11 bankruptcy as well. Now that I'm in the smaller market, though, I've learned that in order to be a full-service law firm in a small town like this, that you need to, as a lawyer, be able to do a lot of different things. And so what I've begun to do, about 5 years ago, I started doing estate planning, trust wills, and that type of work. In Safety Harbor in particular, it's a really great practice to have because most of the people I've met around here want to have a will or a trust. And so it's a matter of being available to do the type of work that the people around you need you to do. So I've become a specialist in estate planning as well.
And I heard it said that you also do special needs trusts. Can you tell me what that is all about?
Yes, I do. Special needs trusts are trusts that are designed to assist people who are handicapped in being able to have money available for their life expenditures, but also be able to get government assistance. And so what a special needs trust essentially does is it allows the person who settles the trust, it's usually the parent of, that's the typical scenario, is the parent of a child who's disabled. The parent will settle the trust, the special needs trust, and what that allows that person to do is to use money to pay for the care of the disabled person, but that doesn't count against the person's income as to a needs-based issue. In other words, Social Security doesn't count the assets in that trust in order to determine disability payments. That practice has been great for me because it's something very different than anything I've done before. Mm-hmm. It also involves a component that I really love, which is helping people and being compassionate about what I'm doing. In those cases in particular, I really enjoy helping those people, and it just makes the day a wonderful day.
U.S. News and World Report has named you one of the top or one of the best law firms in the U.S.
Yes.
So that must have been a great honor. So what other prestigious awards have you earned as well?
Over my career, I have been selected by the best lawyers in America, super lawyers in Florida, the best law firms in the United States is another award that we've gotten as well. I also, for many years, was a board certified attorney. I'm not board certified anymore presently. I've been Martindale-Hubbell, chosen by Martindale-Hubbell for 20 years or more. I've gotten a lot of recognition, and I say that humbly. I think it's just, going out and working hard every day is really what it's all about. And when you do that, those things tend to come to you.
Mm-hmm. Has the practice of law changed since over the 30-year duration of your experience?
Oh my gosh, has it? I mean, it is almost hard to decide where to start to talk about that. The first thing, though, I think that's really clear where it's changed it's changed for all of us, not just the law practice, which is the advent of email and texting. The need for instant gratification, instant answers, immediate turnarounds. Those are the challenges that you have to face these days as a business person and certainly as a lawyer, because clients expect that things are resolved and answered very quickly. So that's one part of it. Things have sped up a lot. The other part of it, of course, is technology. Things are filed electronically. A lot of the law practice is electronic. I have been trying, you wouldn't tell by looking at my office, but I've been trying for about a year to go paperless. And I'm not doing very well, but I'm still trying. Because I do think that you can be very efficient in today's world with technology if you use it correctly and don't waste a bunch of paper at the same time. That's a fact.
Okay. So the client expectation, I've heard, has differentiated because it's now more immediate results.
Right. That's right. There's a couple things that come into play there, I think. One of them is that people are just expect immediate results. The other thing is you have a much more well-informed set of consumers, because people nowadays are very good at looking at Google, looking at all search engine sources to find out about who it is if they're looking to hire a professional or whoever it may be. Your customer or client is coming to you with a lot of knowledge. In the past, that wasn't so much the case. What that does do, I think, in one part is it enhances competition and it gives you more choices, and I think that's beneficial to clients.
Mm-hmm. So has the great resignation that we've experienced over the past year or so, has that affected the law practice in any?
I think it has. I mean, I think to maybe a smaller degree than some other professions. But I'll tell you a couple things that have happened as a result of the pandemic and the same kind of mind shift you're talking about is there are a lot more lawyers who are working from home, not from the traditional office. So you have a very different kind of environment for the workplace for most people. Mm-hmm. In a smaller environment like my firm, we've been working from the office all the way through the pandemic. We didn't have, we were able to social distance in our office, so we were very lucky as far as that's concerned. But I think that there's a lot of changes that occurred through the pandemic that I think have affected my industry and others. Some of them are good. I mean, I think there's certainly some good things that have come out of this. People have become to focus on life as not just a job, but a career, a time to have fun. I think for many years Americans kind of lost sight of that, and I kind of feel like the pandemic, as odd as it may sound, as ironic as that may be, has kind of shown us the error of our ways. And I think the fact that a lot of people are resigning from their jobs, that may be sort of an instant reaction, and maybe they'll settle back in at some later point. But I think the mindset shift that society has taken, at least in the United States, I think is positive. Mm-hmm. I think it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So let's shift focus now. And how about cyber criminals? Like just about everybody that's probably that I know watching this video, everybody has been affected by cyber criminals in some way. Has that impacted the law firms in any way?
Well, cybercrime has impacted law firms in a couple different ways. One, the same way that any other business is affected, which is the fear of being hacked and having sensitive information taken, or somehow you get sabotaged. We have that same fear. There's a lot, just like in I think in most industries, trade groups and that sort of thing in the law field are really focused on cybercrime in terms of protecting yourself and your client's information, that sort of thing. The other place where it's really affected the legal world is there are lawyers who are starting to create practices that are essentially designed towards preventing cybercrime and or finding the bad person after the fact and maybe trying to find a way to fix the damage that was created. So there is sort of a burgeoning field in the law. Who knows?
So we've all been affected by the pandemic in some way. And I'm just wondering about the law office. Has the law office too been affected, or is basically the practice of law pandemic proof?
In one way, I would say that it's at least pandemic resistant, because what has happened is the system, referring mostly to the court system, had to adjust to the pandemic. And it was one of the focuses of, the news and society as to how to deal with the pandemic and yet have the business of the country continue forward. So the courts, I have to take my hat off to the courts, federal and state courts, all did a fantastic job of, dealing with the pandemic, creating scenarios where you could do hearings and trials by Zoom. So people really, I think the legal system in general, I think reacted well to the pandemic. I think in terms of law firms, the thing I mentioned earlier that we're also benefited by is the fact that technology has become such a significant part of what we do, that being in a physical office, despite my preference for doing that, and I think there's a lot of benefits to that, I think you can still practice law from home nowadays. And so I think in some ways the practice has been pandemic resistant.
Okay, very good. So do you see any legal trends for the future?
Well, I'll tell you, there are a few things that lately have come to mind that I've noticed. One of those has to do with ADA compliance for websites. Now, that's something I'm not sure how many of the people listening to this are aware of, but the American with Disabilities Act, which was originally passed in the 70s, has been amended, and it has a portion of it that requires websites to be accessible for handicapped people. And what that means in part is, say, if you have a deaf person trying to watch a video on your website, I think people are going to be surprised by the fact that they're going to have claims brought against them for their website not being compliant with the ADA. Now, how big that's going to get, who knows? I do know I spoke to someone, two different people over the last 2 days who have gotten letters from lawyers alleging that their website's not ADA compliant. So I think that's something we're going to see more of, whether it's a big significant trend, who knows. In terms of other trends in the law, we still tend to have, as I mentioned earlier, people always trying to find ways to make money, always looking for the next big thing in terms of, suing people and so forth. I'd say in terms of a positive trend, I think that, that the law practice, at least in this area around here, has become a little bit more professional of late. My view is that professionalism is making a comeback. I know that's not a often stated thing these days, but I see it. I see it in just little small things. I think maybe it is something to do with this, new mindset emergence we had from the pandemic. I think people just sort of appreciate their lives a little bit more. But I think a trend in the law is, I think professionalism is making a comeback. There was a time when it was one of the worst parts about being a lawyer was having to deal with other offensive personalities, and I find that not to be the case as much.
Here's a little bit. Now, as stellar as your reputation is in the practice of law, you also have an amazing reputation for your involvement in the community. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of elaborate on your community involvement and things you have, what gets to your heart?
Yes, I'd love to do that. When I have to go back a number of years to answer this. When I was about 32 years old, which is a while ago, I started working as a pro bono attorney for the guardian ad litem program in Hillsborough County. And if people who don't know what that is, a guardian ad litem is appointed for a child who has been abused or neglected by their parents, allegedly. And the guardian ad litem program is one where volunteers actually go out and keep track of these children, go to visit them, kind of their idea is to be part of their lives so that the child has some lifeline outside of their home where there's an abusive scenario going on. But in any event, I got involved in that program. It was fun because it was competitive. We had to, win cases for the child. And that made it very easy because your client was this poor kid whose life has been, kind of ruined so far. Anyway, so that got the juices flowing, and I worked for various firms who were all very encouraging in terms of being involved civically. And I've found that civic involvement, some people look at it as just simply a means to an end. It's like, well, I have to be involved civically because people need to see me, and it's a marketing type thing. I mean, I have to admit there certainly is, a marketing aspect to civic involvement. But for me, it comes more from the passion. These days, my passion is more like we were talking about earlier with special needs children. I've been involved in several organizations associated with fundraising for that scenario. Right now, I'm the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce here in Safety Harbor. I have been for the last 2 years. That's been another great civic involvement. It's not quite the same as dealing with underprivileged children or abused children or something of that nature, but what we have done in the Chamber of Commerce, I think this is probably typical for chambers of commerce these days, is we put a real civic component into what we do. So in other words, the chamber is not just there for the local businesses, it's also there for the community here. And we have scholarship programs, we have some underprivileged children assistance that is being generated through the chamber. So by doing that, it's kind of helped me to be able to do some things I'm passionate about, and yet at the same time, market myself. So it's been a part of my career from day one, being involved in the community. And I think all lawyers and all professionals really kind of owe it to the community to do that.
Yes, well, that community involvement really does make a difference when you're able to reach out and help,
right,
and be a positive influence.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay, so what would you offer as advice for maybe a student thinking of a career path and maybe thinking of the law profession?
Okay. What I would tell somebody who's interested in the law profession is that you need to, in order to succeed, there's a few things that are the case. One is you have to obviously be, able to understand and read the law, but as far as individual personal talent, I think maybe one of the more important thing is to be able to develop your ability to analyze things. And so my point would be to someone who's thinking about becoming a lawyer or a law student is if you enjoy, analyzing data and coming up with conclusions, if you like to argue, if you like to take a position and defend it, or switch sides and take the other position and defend it, if you have the drive to help people, and I think the one piece of advice I would give is that when you're in college, I wouldn't worry about pre-law. I would worry about learning how to write, because being an effective writer is really the crux of most law practices. So I would say you obviously have to focus on your grades. I mean, unfortunately these days it's so hard to get into school. You have to have great grades, you have to have civic involvement. But what I would say to somebody is, if you feel like you have the underpinnings for the talent that it takes to be a lawyer, I wouldn't be afraid of all the negative stuff you hear in society about it. It's been for me a very rewarding career. It's given me an opportunity to have, you have to work very hard. That's just a given. But the freedom that the practice of law gives to you in terms of choosing who you work for and that type of thing is wonderful. And I would encourage people, contrary to most what you'll hear from lawyers about, there's too many lawyers and don't go to law school. I would say if you have, the desire, you like it, you think you're good at that, I think you can turn being a lawyer into a great career in the future. And one other piece of advice, like I said, don't take pre-law classes. Maybe take English or history or something like that where you learn how to express yourself in writing. And I'd also say learn about technology. The more you know about technology, the better off you are. One of the advantages that younger lawyers have as opposed to older lawyers is that technology. It's just sort of built in. It's baked into them. Anybody who's 35 or younger, they've been around computers their entire life. So technology, be a well-rounded person, learn how to write well, and look at yourself and decide, is this something that I would like to do? And I think mostly what it has to do with is just being able to stand on your feet and then convince people, persuade and convince.
Very, very good advice.
Thank you.
Do you have any success stories that you can share about maybe someone who, in any of your cases, that your involvement had made a huge difference in what they did?
Wow, I'd like to think that happens a lot. In terms of something that's unique or interesting, I would say maybe the most impactful representation I've had in the recent years has to do with a special needs case that I dealt with. What was most impactful for me was the effect that I had on the parents. The scenario, just to give you a little background that you deal with, are typically in these cases it's a child with autism. That's usually the scenarios that I get involved with. And what you have is you have parents who have raised their children and they're about to turn 18 years old and become adults legally. At that stage, think about this, you're a parent with a teenage child who you've been told by physicians and psychologists and psychiatrists that this person's not going to be able to necessarily care for themselves for the rest of their life. Think about the pressure and just the emotions that creates for someone. So these people in that position, I have the opportunity to represent them and have them come to me and express to me the concerns and the fear and having the opportunity to just sort of talk to them, give them factual responses, be kind. I felt with this particular couple that I made a real difference for them. And they came back around and told me that at the end. That makes my job great. I mean, being able to help somebody, even if it's something not that significant, even if it's not that significant at all, it still feels good to help people. At the end of the day, I think a lot of professions, your profession, for example, it's about helping people too. And I think that's more about a mindset. That if we look at every day as, we don't look at our clients necessarily as just dollar signs or numbers, we look at them as people. And we look at our jobs as being helping people. I think if you keep that mindset during your day, number one, you're going to treat people well. They're going to feel that and react positively to you. And I think number two, you're going to be happier. So, why not? Why not choose to be happy?
That was so beautiful. That tears are welling up in my eyes. I can't hide it.
Oh, wow.
Because that's my heart, helping people and making it better as much as I can for as many as I can.
Exactly.
In the limited time that I actually have to do it.
Seems to me you have figured that out.
Well, it's been my driving force in life, that is for sure. So, but not as we wind up, what is the best way for people to contact you?
Best way for people to contact me are the three following ways. Number one is via our website, which is mpbrundagelaw.com, mpbrundagelaw.com. The second way to contact me would be by telephone. My phone number is 727-250-2488. Third way would be by email. My email is mike@mpbrundagelaw.com. And please call me or contact me if I can help you in any way, even if it's just you want to ask a question about something. I don't like to sit around and give away free legal advice, but I'm happy to. I like to talk to people, especially if you have some burning question that's been bothering you. Call me. I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah, I think it's true. Some people may have a problem or situation, but don't know for sure, and they don't have anyone they could even ask to find out.
Right.
So.
And I do free consultations for anyone and everyone, one time per matter, obviously. But so if you need to talk to someone about a problem or an issue, please feel free to call me, and I'll give you 15-20 minutes of my time, and we'll see if I can help you.
Okay, one final word. Anything final thing that you'd like to say to the community before we wrap up?
What I'd like to say to the community is I'd like us all to kind of take on the theme that I'm trying to depict through this interview, which is to recognize, we're all on this big hot magma rock together, and especially when you bring it down to a smaller community, when we're talking about the North Tampa Bay area here, Oldsmar, Safety Harbor, Palm Harbor, I would like to see these communities. We have people here who are wonderful leaders. I think that's shown some. I think this is a time for America to shine. I think it's a time for Florida and certainly Pinellas County to shine. We're in this strange world that none of us really understand, and there's, things are kind of scary, but we have opportunity. And I think what I'd love for all of us to do is to just remember every day that we're all in this together. Let's not hate each other. Let's love each other. And I think that if we live that way, everything will be better.
I don't know if that is appropriate, but I sure would like to say amen to that.
Amen is all right. That's fair.
So thank you for joining today's edition of Let's Keep It Local with Kim. And I thank Michael for agreeing to this interview, and I'm looking forward to my next interview.
Thank you, Kim. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you.